Hey, welcome back to Bourdain. We are making tomato salad. If you love tomatoes, I think you have to make this recipe. If you don't, I might have some other better videos for you. To quote Bourdain, this dish, you will be astonished to hear, is all about the tomatoes. 2 pounds to be exact. Bourdain does call for heirloom tomatoes, however, I only found one that was up to my standards. Cutting down the middle here, I hope these look nice and they turn out pretty okay. For the end of the season, not too bad at all. We're gonna slice them into quarters, and then I go after our heirloom, which I could eat like a freaking apple. The darkened stemmy parts aren't too appetizing. I get the core out, then I slice this into similar sizes as our other tomatoes, getting them into wedges. An interesting part here, we are going to degorge our tomatoes, which involves sprinkling them with salt in a colander and allowing them to hang out for about half an hour. This is going to bring out the moisture and make them much more easier to remove the seeds, and also the salt is going to add flavor. Next, 1 red onion or shallot, depending on how chefy you want to be. Note, I do thinly slice this with the grain of the onion, as opposed to those rings you would see on a burger. By doing this, it looks better, it tastes sweeter, and the texture isn't as mealy. Sprinkle these with salt, and they're gonna hang out with our tomato friends for half an hour. Here is where I improvise a little bit off of Bourdain's recipe. We're going to make a panzanella salad, which is basically a tomato salad with bread. In my opinion, one of the best parts of vegetable-based salads is the dressing that gets left at the bottom of the bowl. By cutting up these 1x1 croutons made from just simply white country bread, we're gonna have a nice crunchy texture contrast along with something else to soak up those juices. Bourdain then calls for us to crush a garlic clove and rub this in our salad dressing bowl. After adding a few nice glugs of olive oil, totaling around half a cup, I dunk our cubed bread in here, noticing we need a way bigger bowl. I love olive oil, but not that much. Drizzling our olive oil in a bigger bowl and giving our croutons a nice little toss, we put these on a grate. My theory being this will be better for some airflow and will dry out our croutons more evenly. Can't remember exactly what temperature I heated these croutons at, but I want to say around 350 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes, being sure to watch them as they're cooking. Next, Bourdain calls for 1 sprig of basil. Of course, I'm Italian and 1 is not in my vocabulary, so I get a nice handful here, about 2 sprigs, and I get to do one of my favorite things, which is rolling this up in a cigar and slicing it thinly in what is called a chiffonade. Adding my own flair here, I get a tablespoon or 2 of capers. I am in love with these briny, salty seed things. I'm not sure what they are, but they're phenomenal. I chop up half of them pretty finely and reserve the other half to maintain that nice little pop you can get when you bite into a caper. Quick little check on another dish I'm actually making during this recipe, blanquette de veau, which turned out much better than my pronunciation. I'll have the video top right for you. A half hour has passed and it is time to degorge our tomatoes, which feels kind of wrong to me. I'm not sure why, but removing this flavor, these seeds, it seems a little sacrilegious. However, we are now left with the lovely flesh of the tomato, and I do know the seeds can kind of turn people off because they're a little gelatinous, a little funky. You're not sure if you crunch on them, just swallow them whole. But we get it done and we get our de-seeded tomatoes off to the side. Now we make our dressing. I apologize I didn't record. I did add our chopped capers, our whole capers, and the basil to our mixing bowl, and then I get real balsamic vinegar that my aunt gave me with some healthy glugs of olive oil. Giving this a whisk and then a little taste, I think we needed a little more acid, so I added half a lemon. I think I went a little overboard with the balsamic vinegar, mainly because I've never made anything with such a nice ingredient. We season with pepper and salt, and when you taste your, I want to sneeze. We then add all of our ingredients into a bowl. Granted, a bigger bowl would be nice. Our tomatoes, our red onions, the lovely dressing we made, and give it a toss. Not being afraid to be a little rough here. I think part of the lovely flavor that is developed is kind of breaking down the tomatoes a bit. Our big giant croutons have turned out nothing but perfect, and we add them to the bowl as well. Giving this a toss, and then I decide to plate this in a similar fashion I actually saw at a restaurant I went to named Zeppeli in Collingswood, New Jersey. If you haven't heard of it, you should go. A nice little baby bed of arugula, and then placing the tomatoes and bread in a checkerboard like pattern. This is where it gets a little tricky. We then place them on top of each other, making this tower of delicious bread and tomatoes. I struggled here big time, mainly because tomatoes are round and the bread is square, but hey, we make it work. Then giving this a nice little drizzle with our remaining dressing, which I swear if I could bottle, I would be a millionaire, and placing a tiny little basil leaf on top because that just looks very pretty. Overall, this presentation just blows me away. It's almost asking to be destroyed and tucked into. Giving this a taste, not to my surprise, it was delicious. I don't mean that to be a cocky statement. This is simply one of those recipes where the ingredients sing and you just have to turn the volume up a bit because they are delicious on their own. If you like my style, if you want to see more of what I'm doing, think about subscribing. Thank you for spending your time with me. This was Back to Bourdain.